All right, great. Okay, so we'll begin by looking at you. So you have your T-scan handpiece and
Yep.
sensors and supports, right? Have you had a chance to, have you played with it at all? Did you try
Yeah,
assembling this
yeah.
and
I
see?
actually use it on patients. Like
Oh,
I said,
oh,
I've
beautiful.
used it on one or two patients, but it's just some of the little tweaks
Oh, that's
that.
right. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna take this training. We're gonna take it as though it's a patient presenting for the very first time. So we'll go
Okay.
through a standard protocol
Okay.
from setting up the handpiece with the sensor and the support. We'll just review that quickly, although you know how to do it. And
Okay.
then we'll go into the software. We'll enter a patient into the database. And part of that is creating the arch model to best reflect the patient's upper and lower dentition.
Okay.
So we want to tell the software where the crowns, where are the implants, and just get an overall understanding of the overall size and shape of the arch.
Okay.
Okay, and then we'll take some scans. We'll record, save, and review the scans. So your T-scan training, it's actually 2 training sessions. Yeah, I just
Okay.
want you to know that. So, because 1 hour of training is typically not enough. It's nobody learns T-scan in 1 hour. There's a lot to it. So we get you started. Then we let you use it on your own for a couple of weeks, get more familiar with it, and then we'll follow up with a second training, and we'll do a deeper dive into the clinical side.
Okay.
Okay,
Perfect.
great. All right, so we'll start with the T-scan handpiece. This is the Novus handpiece. Um, and to the setup, I think you've already done it. The tech scan, this is the support, and this holds the cheeks open, so it doesn't allow the cheeks to collapse the sensor when it's in the mouth. It comes in 2 sizes, large and small. And if you're not sure, I know on the package it gives you the size, but if you're holding a sensor and you don't have the packaging, then on the support itself, there's a letter on the bottom corner there, an L or an S
If I see that.
embossed. Yeah. Um, this support has a point right here, and that's called the position guide, and that is there to help you uh, put the sensor into the mouth in a repeatable position. So if we put the sensor in the mouth, we take a scan, then we remove it, make an adjustment. Now when you put the sensor back in the mouth, you want this to go to the same position. So the data is repeatable from one movie to another as far as the position of the tooth contacts on the teeth. So we physically, this should physically touch between the central incisors when you're holding it in the mouth, kind of halfway up the tooth surface between 8 and 9. Not under the incisal edge, of course, because we don't want that to prevent them from biting. Okay. Um, this is autoclavable, and in the
Okay.
software, yeah, in the manual, there's some instructions on, settings for your autoclave. The support snaps in, click. The point should be facing the side of the buttons on the handpiece, and of course the letter. And then there's a latch in the back which locks the sensor into the handpiece. I have the sensor. Okay, so this is our intraoral sensor. Again, this comes in 2 sizes. The size of the sensor must match the size of the support. Okay, so small support, small sensor, large and large. And the size is right here, right underneath that V. There's also a tab sticking out on the side that says up, so you know the direction. So you should be reading that as you're placing it into the sensor.
Okay.
So
I
the
see that.
so the, yeah. So the sensor slides right through the support. There's a very thin slot there, and it just slides right in. Make sure the latch is down all the way to the unlock position. Once you feel it hit the bottom, we slide the latch up to lock it in place. But
Okay.
apparently you've already done this because you've been using it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now on your handpiece, we have 2 LED lights, and they must both be lit in order for it to work. The top light confirms that the handpiece is plugged into the PC and it's receiving power, and that the driver is loaded, and the T-scan software recognizes that the handpiece is attached to the PC. Let's see if I can get that working on my end. Okay, yep. So you can see right here, so you can see I have one green light right now on the top. That means it's plugged into the USB port, and the PC knows it's plugged in. It recognizes this piece of hardware.
Mhm.
The other light below that confirms that the sensor is correctly inserted and connected. So once I lock the latch up, you'll see the light will light up. And now I have 2 green lights, and that's what I need in order to take a scan.
All right.
That's
Yeah.
the whole
Got
setup
it.
process.
Yeah.
2 lights, good. You're good to go.
All
So
right.
below the lights, we have 2 buttons, plus and a minus button. and that increases and decreases the sensitivity of the sensor.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Didn't know
yeah,
that. All
and
right.
we'll do an exercise on that. And basically what we're doing, you can almost think of it as like a calibration routine where we're calibrating the output of the sensor to your patient's unique bite force, right?
Okay. So
Yeah,
if I increase the sensitivity, what does that mean?
it
What,
means
what
that it takes less of a force to register data. So let's say you have a patient with a very strong bite, then there's going to be too many tooth contacts. The sensor is going to be too sensitive for that person. We need to turn down the sensitivity by hitting the minus button. On
mm,
the other side, you might have a patient who doesn't bite very hard, and maybe there's a lot of reasons. Maybe just don't have a good muscle function to do it, or maybe they're presenting in pain and it hurts when they bite hard, so we don't want them to
mm,
bite so hard. So we can turn up the sensitivity to accommodate their bite.
okay.
Okay. So everybody bites with a different amount of force, and we have to kind of find where that force range falls within the TechScan's output by adjusting the sensitivity. And we'll do an exercise on that to clarify how that works. So again, plus minus increases the sensitivity, minus button decreases the sensitivity. And then below that, we have the record button. So the red button is
Red
record.
button. Okay.
The red button, yep, and it's a record similar to the record button on your cell phone's video camera, right?
Okay.
You click record, you click it, it records the activity or the function, and then when the patient's completed that function, whether it's an excursion or just a straight bite or a multiple bite, then you click, when they've completed it, you click it to stop it.
Okay.
Okay, now let's say you've taken a recording and you want to take another recording. You
Mm,
just click this button again and it opens up a new recording window in the software.
okay. So I don't physically have to do it on the computer. Like I have
Right.
an assistant clicking and unclicking.
Exactly right. And that's kind of the point that we wanted to create a tool that could work remotely from chairside rather than having
Okay.
to reach to the keyboard and mouse every time. You know, there is some functionality. Obviously, when you get into software review, you need to go to the PC, to the keyboard and control it from there. But for recording functionality, you can pretty much do everything from chairside.
Okay.
Start a recording, stop a recording, and then start the whole process again with a new recording.
Okay.
Okay, and
Uh,
we'll practice all that good stuff.
okay.
Okay, as far as cleaning this equipment, the sensor, you can wipe it down with a 70% isopropyl alcohol. You can't autoclave it, of course. The support is autoclavable, as I mentioned, and this handpiece, you wipe it down with a Cavi wipe.
Cavi white. So it's not
Yeah.
going to distort it, turn it yellow with the cavi white.
No, it's not. No, this plastic is it's resistant from that. So,
Okay.
and we've tested it. So, yeah, our
And how
oldest.
many?
Yep.
So in the typical like patient, how many times can I use this scanner? The
This
tab?
sensor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this part.
approximately 25 bites.
25 bytes. Okay.
Yeah, we say 15 to 25, and it just depends on how much activity it sees. I kind of compare this to like the brakes on your car. If you do a lot of city driving, your brakes are gonna wear faster than if you're doing a lot of highway. So if you're doing a lot of chewing and biting and excursive movements, it's gonna
Mhm.
tend to fail quicker than if they're just biting and opening,
Okay.
right? So really, it's just
'Cause I
based.
started this case. I started this with a TMD case, and I mean, once I use it, I bagged it like I put it where all her stuff. So I didn't know if I can actually reuse it because it has the bite prints on it.
Yep.
So I didn't know that question, how many times can I use it, or is it like a one-time use?
Yeah, so so yeah, absolutely. So if you feel there's still life left, you had a short session, maybe you took a few bites,
Yeah,
and you feel there's plenty of life left in the sensor, you can again wipe it down with the rubbing alcohol and then put it. A lot of people will use like an autoclave bag, slide it in
yeah.
there, and then just with the Sharpie write the patient's name or date it or whatnot. But it can be used again for the same patient, of course,
Okay.
you can't use it for a different patient, but you
Ah,
can reuse it in a subsequent visit.
okay.
Absolutely. Yep. No question about that. Okay, so I'm going to place it back in. Um, this side up, lock and load. Okay, good. All right, so we're going to continue on. Any more questions on the handpiece?
No.
Okay, so if you would go ahead and launch your T-Scan software and then share your screen with me. I don't know if you're familiar with sharing a screen on Zoom.
Let's see how you do that.
Yeah,
Share.
yeah. So Yeah, so if you go, you can do it, you can launch the software first, or you can,
I did that, but how do you,
yeah.
okay,
So move your mouse around and you see a toolbar will pop up from the bottom of your screen with a green share screen button.
I don't see that. I just,
If you slide your mouse around or like over your video window,
okay, I see the share screen, okay.
yeah, click share screen and then it will give you, if you have more than one window open, it's gonna display that
There
and you pick
you
the
go.
one you want. Perfect. You got it. All
Can you
right.
see mine?
I can. I can see you and I can see your screen.
Okay,
Exactly what we
okay.
want. Is the database open?
Uh,
If you click that, yep, that's fine. The patient list. There you go. Perfect. This is the starting point. When you launch a T-scan, this is the first window that you see. Okay, so it's as though you just launched it from the desktop. So we're
right,
right where we need to be. Okay, so the first thing we're going to notice that in the database, the top half of the screen, you have a bunch of patients already populated with
mhm,
we've given them all the first name, same first name example, and their last name is what the example is about. So these are demonstration movies. So we have a lot of those, and we're not going to probably look at those today, but we're going to start by creating a new patient. So let's do that. So if you can click new patient.
okay, we're gonna do a new patient.
Yep, new patient.
Okay,
Yep. Yep, and then fill out that information. If you're already, are you already in the
so,
database? If you
yep,
are, you could just make up a name. Yeah,
yep,
date of birth. Yep. So any of the fields with asterisks are required. So that's pretty much has them all. And then above that, at the top of the screen, we have a upper arch tooth chart tab. Let's click that. Okay, so we've done step one. We've just entered the patient's personal information. Now step two, we're going to customize the arch model to best reflect your patient's upper and lower dentition. We're going to start with the upper arch. Now, it's not critical that we do this now, especially since you're doing yourself. The first thing we do is we take a Bowley gauge or a digital caliper, and we would measure the width of one upper central incisor at its widest point, and we would enter that number right where it says 8.5. That's our default size. So we'll just use the 8.5. It's, you know what, usually it's really close anyway. Okay, what this does is it uses a rule of golden proportion. So based on that 8.5, and you know what, let me see if I can, I'm going to request remote control if you mind accepting that. Just what, that way I can click around and you can see my mouse. All right, so you see my mouse moving on your screen?
yep,
Good, yeah, so we have the 8.5 millimeter right here. And that's a field that you can type any measurement into. So if you skip this step, it's going to use 8.5 millimeters. Based on that measurement, just below, you can see the teeth from 16 from left to right, number one. Below 9 and 8, we have 8.5 because that's that central incisor width. If you change that number, it'll repopulate those values under 9 and 8 to whatever you enter, and it will recalculate out the rest of the two sizes using the rule of golden proportion.
gotcha.
So you see, based on an 8.5 central, you have the laterals are 6.5 millimeters, the canine 7.5, all the way out to the molars. So it gives the software some idea of the overall shape of the arch, width and depth. It's a starting point. Again, in lieu of an actual cast of the teeth or an impression of the teeth, it's using mathematics and algorithm to try to get an idea what the arch looks like. So it's a starting point. We may have to customize it beyond that. Okay, so
Okay,
after you're done with that, we're going to go and we're going to choose a status for each tooth. So let's start that at the bottom half of the screen. There's for every tooth, there's a drop down menu to the right. And let's start with, so do you have your third molars?
no,
Okay, so go down to 16 and 1 and click the drop down menu and choose missing open.
missing open.
Yeah, because the
Okay,
space is
what's the
there.
difference between the missing open and the missing close?
Yeah, so most typically, as it relates to the T-scan, a missing close is usually a premolar that was removed for orthodontics.
Gotcha.
So the space has been closed up. A missing open is a recent extraction. It could be you could have an implant, but with a healing cap, but not a crown yet. I would consider that an open. So there's
What about
nothing
congenitally
there.
missing teeth? Because I'm
It's a,
congenitally missing premolars.
Yeah,
Like mine was it 20, 20, and 29.
on your lower arch.
So those will be considered missing open as
Mi-
well?
Your premolars
Yeah.
for orthodontics, that would be missing
No, I
closed.
just generally
Oh,
never had them.
yeah. So if you never had them, but is there an open space? Is there a gap?
Yeah, there's open space.
Oh, yeah, then it's a missing open. Exactly right. Or,
Okay.
like say a recent extraction, a tooth got knocked out, whatever it is.
Okay.
If there's just nothing there, but the space is there, it's an open. If it's been closed up because the tooth migrated into that space, then that would be a missing close. And it's most commonly a missing close is usually because of premolars that were removed for orthodontic extraction.
Okay.
So yep. And then after you're done like doing the missing teeth, and really important is implants. That's really important to tell the software. Do you have any implants in your upper arch?
Nope.
Okay. Any crowns?
Nope.
Okay. So everything else, just a full natural dentition other than that?
Yep.
Okay. Let's go to the lower arch tooth chart tab, and go ahead and chart your lower arch.
Okay.
Good. Okay. And you have your third, yeah. Exactly right.
All right.
Good. All right. And you can always go back and edit this. So if you, because patient's status changes all the time anyway, right? You start with a patient and you're going to there might be a missing tooth. You might place an implant. So today it's a missing open, and then next visit it's an implant, right? A month or 6 months later, whatever it is. So you want to continuously update the status of the arch model.
Okay.
As their status changes. So when you're done with that, click create at the bottom of the window. Yep. And notice that Mr. Test has been added to the database. Now, all those other names that were there, right, all those examples are now not there anymore.
Right.
That's just a HIPAA requirement. So the software automatically hides those names. So
Gotcha.
if you have a patient in the chair and they can see the monitor, they can't see your list of patients.
Okay.
If you want to see the list of patients, click the show all patients at the very top middle. Yep. If you click that, and it repopulates the list.
Okay.
Okay. And if you go ahead and, so test is still the highlighted name. So it still knows, the software knows that that's who our patient is right now. And let's go to the bottom left-hand corner and click new scan. Okay, great. So now we have a two-dimensional view of the upper arch on the hand side of the screen. And we have a three-dimensional view on the right-hand side of the screen. Okay, so a couple of things to point out here. On the two-dimensional view, if you look at your molars, you can see the missing molars are represented by grayed out spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's how it represents a missing open tooth. The space is gray because the space is still there on an open. But if it's a closed space, it's just going to draw it. The interproximal line, instead of it being black, it's going to be a red hash marked line showing it's missing, but the space is closed up.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. And then at the bottom of the screen in the middle is a sensitivity control, and that relates back to what we were talking about, these buttons right here.
Okay.
So if you would just click your plus button on your handpiece and watch the sensitivity increase, pardon me, and just bring it up to medium.
It's not moving.
Okay. Try clicking your mouse on your screen just to wake it up. Well, you can do it that way. Yeah. Now try your handpiece, the plus and minus button. Is it not okay? All right, we'll explore that in a moment. So if you to the right of the sensitivity control, it says that the sensor has a red dot on the software. That means you shouldn't. Do you have two? Do you have two? One or two green lights on your handpiece?
I have two green lights.
You have two green lights, but a red. Okay, that's interesting. Can you squeeze your fingers on the sensor?
I'm squeezing it now.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if we can
Does it need to recognize?
Yeah, well, when you have two green lights, especially when you have two green lights, that where it says sensor on your screen should be green as well. It's the same indicator. It means that there's a sensor in the handpiece. It's properly connected. We're ready to do a recording. Let's do this. If you could just unlatch your sensor and just relatch it. Let's see if it wakes up the software.
Not doing anything.
Not doing anything. Okay. All right. Let's try to close your T-Scan software. We're going to probably lose our. Yep. And then relaunch it.
Okay.
Yeah, and just find your name and just scroll down the list to find that test. Just highlight it and new scan. Let's see if that.
Okay. No available handpiece with
Yeah,
frown.
and it's all right. Click OK to that, and then go click that yellow plug that you're. Yeah, and see if and it's plugged in, right? And you have green
Yeah.
lights.
Yep.
Okay, hit the click OK. All right, click again. Okay, so let's do this. All right.
Hold on.
Yeah, you know what? I think this is a driver issue. Let me, if I could click around on your software, I think I need to ask again for permission. Oops, I don't want that.
I just tried to use another USB port. Let's see. There we go. I think I got it this time.
Yeah.
I gave you permission on it, I think. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. So go ahead and open up a new movie window.
I think you have control now.
Yeah. Click the record button on your handpiece for me. Let's see. Yep, I have control. So let's go to here. We got test, new scan. Yep, there it goes.
Okay.
Now
Yeah, you
squeeze.
had to recognize it. I think that's what.
Yeah. All right. Let's squeeze it with your fingers. Just make sure. So this is the first thing you do. Just make sure it's working. You see your fingerprints on
Yeah.
the screen when you squeeze. Okay, that's the first test. We want to make sure it's working. Okay, good. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do a quick exercise on the sensitivity to understand how this works and what it does. Let's focus on the 3D view, the one on the right-hand side. And again, if you give it a squeeze and watch the 3D view on the right, and as you squeeze it, the harder you squeeze it, the columns were going to rise and fall depending on how hard you squeeze. So give it a good hard squeeze and just watch the columns kind of rise. And I see that you can squeeze the heck out of it and all you're getting is a couple of levels of blue, right?
Yep.
And you're squeezing the heck out of it and you can't get too far. Now let's see if this is working, your plus button. Is that, yep, and bring it all the way up to high. And we're going to turn it way up and squeeze again.
Yeah,
see it takes very little force now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the entire spectrum of force output is from the dark blue up to the pink. When you see pink contacts, those are the maximum force colors. You can't go above a pink.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So now you can see it takes very little force. So imagine a patient, again, that just can't bite very hard. It doesn't give us a good registration. We would tend to turn up the sensitivity to match their weaker bite forces. And a patient with a really strong bite, they bite and you're seeing lots of pink sense cells. Then you would turn down the sensitivity.
Oh, okay.
So the goal is to have, when the patient's clenching hard, we want to see between 1 and 3 pinks.
Overall.
Yeah, overall, yeah, when they're biting hard. So let's start at the middle. So if you could bring it back to medium. Yep. And there's 14 levels, and we're at level 7 right now. We're kind of in the middle of the range of output between low and high. And now we're going to have you, instead of you squeezing with your fingers, we're going to have you bite on it because we're matching the bite forces. Okay. So just a quick note on the placing the sensor in the mouth. We always place it so that we're holding it against the upper occlusal plane, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to touch this again, the center, the position guide. We're going to touch it lightly between the upper essentials, but it should physically touch your teeth. So when you're ready, just kind of roll it in and slide it right in there, get that touching, and then bite through the sensor we're not going to record it. We're just going to in real time. Okay, so you're touching that plastic point on your teeth? Okay, yeah, bite and open and bite. Yeah, so what we want to do is we want to go through a process where we're conditioning the patient. We're letting them get comfortable because this thing is not natural to bite on, right? It's kind of, it feels weird. So after you've had a chance to bite and open, the bite's going to become more and more reproducible as the patient gets more comfortable biting on it.
Right.
And that's what we want to get to, that point where they're nice and comfortable, they're biting comfortably and they're relaxed. And while they're doing that, we're watching the output in real time. Our eyes are on the screen as they're biting, and we're counting how many pinks do we see when they're biting hard.
Right.
And then if there's more, so let's practice that again. So place that back in your mouth. Okay, and squeeze. Yep. Oh, hold on. I think you might have, yeah, try a bite again. There we go. Okay, so you can see what might have happened is you might have, are you using a large or a small?
A large.
Okay, so you want to just unlock it and just reseat it and nice and firmly lock that in place. Okay, good. All right, so let's bite again and bite through the sensor. Touch the point, hold it centered. Now we're counting the pinks. So I see like 3 pinks on the, 2 or 3 pinks on the right, a pink on the left. Just for the fun of it, turn up the sensitivity. So you can do that on the handpiece and just bring it up a bunch of levels and then bite hard again. I just want you to see what happens when it's over. You see how it's obviously over amplified right now?
Mm-hmm.
Too many pinks. I lose relativity. So, and then bring it way, so if you bring it down too low, you're going to see on the opposite side and bring it way down and bite on it. Yeah, so you can still getting 1 pink there. Yeah, and you can see you bite real hard and you're not getting any pinks. I wouldn't typically go below like 3 on the low side. Yes, yep. So now, yeah, so let's leave it there. Open and bite through it. Open, bite hard. Give it a firm squeeze. Yeah, so it's a little, I would bring it down 1 or 2 clicks. And open and close. So this is a process you're going through with the patient. They're clenching, you're adjusting. You don't need to tell the patient what you're doing. Okay, you can pull it out of your mouth and relax. Good. I like that sensitivity setting for you. Once the sensor's been in the mouth, you want to get in the habit of either holding the sensor level or down. So the sensor's the lowest part of the handpiece. Just so we don't want the saliva to run back into the handpiece.
Right.
So just let gravity kind of do its thing. Exactly. Good. Okay, so we set the sensitivity.
So question.
Again, yeah.
So I noticed when I was biting and I got to here, it was kind of almost off the line here. So I guess my question was, I thought I saw somewhere where you can move where the tooth position is. It's not every tooth is in the arch like that. Sometimes I've seen patients that the teeth are, bulkily or palatally. So,
Correct.
Is there a way to manipulate that?
Yeah, there is. And so after we take the recording, in order to make those adjustments that you speak about, we need to have recorded data, because we're gonna use the recording and we're gonna match the arch model that we see in the screen now. We're gonna match the arch model to the tooth contact data.
Okay.
Right. So right now we have an arch model that represents your arch, but it's not it's not exact because it's not an actual impression of your teeth, right? We just measure the central incisor width. We used 8.5 millimeters. Based on that, it created this arch. It doesn't mean it's set up exactly for you. Once we have tooth contact data, then we can recreate that arch around your tooth contact data.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll see that in a moment. So let's do that. Let's do a recording now. What I want you to do, I'd like you to take a recording, a single bite recording.
Okay.
So it always starts by you place it in the mouth first, just to visually help yourself, kind of a visual aid. If you watch the 2-dimensional display, yeah, before you hit record, just bite on it, make sure it's kind of centered and it looks good. Yeah. Now open, and then click record on your handpiece. Bite hard 1 time and hold, and open. Stop the scan, and then remove it from your mouth. Okay, that's a single bite. Okay, notice the arch. I don't know if you noticed this. I probably should have pointed this out before, but the arch model, that's right here, the arch outline, this green outline. You see, now it's customized around your tooth contacts. You see, it's a little bit narrower on the left side.
Right.
Yeah, it's not an exactly symmetrical. That green outline is not exactly symmetrical.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's customized. What it does is it takes the tooth contact data and it draws a line around that data after the fact. Now it has a kind of a sense of where your teeth are landing on the sensor, and it draws a line around that. So it kind of customizes it automatically. but we might have
Okay.
to tweak that. And we'll, as soon as we play the movie, we can see your tooth contacts, then we can customize it.
Okay.
So as far as if let's look at playing a movie or navigating. At the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you have a series of playback buttons, controls that you probably see on every DVD or CD player that you've had throughout
Yeah.
your whole life, right? Every tape recorder, right? So it's pretty intuitive. The middle button's the play button. And go ahead and click that middle button and the movie will play. And in the graph at the bottom of the screen, there's a gray line moving from left to right. And that's the timeline. Okay. So the movie is represented in a graph at the bottom of the screen. Across the bottom of the graph, you have a time axis, 0.0 at the bottom left, all the way to 2.8 on the bottom right. Okay, that's this scan that you just recorded was all of 2.8 seconds long.
Okay.
Okay, and where we are now in that movie, we just passed the 0.8 second mark. So we're approaching about 1 second into a almost 3 second movie, right? So we're in the middle of your bite right here. Right, we're approaching 1.2. At the bottom middle of the screen, there's a time clock that correlates to the timeline in the graph right here. So we're at 1.3 seconds of a 2.824 second movie. Okay. Now, also in the graph, we have 3 lines or 3 traces. We have the black trace, the green, and the red trace.
Mhm.
The black trace in the graph is the total force. Okay, so the software allows you to see when the patient is biting lightly and when they're biting forcefully. Okay, the black line at the bottom at 0.0, you see how the black trace just is coming off of the bottom of the graph?
Mhm.
That's when it starts to measure force. That's when you start your bite. And as you bite together and squeeze your teeth with greater and greater force, the black line rises because it's measuring an increasing force. So when you start your bite here and you squeeze your teeth together, the black line rises.
So,
And
so based on this graph right here, it seemed like I see it's like subtle between 1.2 seconds and 1.7 or 8. I got a little fatigue and then I rebit to get the strength back.
that's
That, that's
yes.
about right.
Yeah, yeah. And it's very little. You're talking about where it dips
Yeah.
down here?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very little though. And so, yeah, so when that black line is at the top of the graph, that's when you're biting the hardest,
Hmm.
right? And that there's a number right here, the force percentage.
Yeah.
So the software normalizes the data so that it creates a scale between 0 and 100%.
Right.
After the recording is made, the software looks at the entire movie, that entire 3 seconds, and it finds the one moment with the most force in it. Every movie has one frame with the most force. The software makes that equal to 100%.
Okay.
And that 100% is wherever the black line is at its highest point within the graph. So it's probably, we can see up here, and then there was that little dip that you suggested, and then it comes back to the top. I can't tell exactly where that is. Obviously, we're close to that because we're at 97%.
Hmm.
If we want to find out exactly where that is, we can go up to our view menu and we can ask the software to find that maximum bite force. And when I click that, you will see the timeline in the graph will snap to 100%. So I'm going to click that, and it went way out here. And that moment right here is equal to 100%.
Gotcha.
Okay, so the software did that. It's called normalizing the data. And again, it creates a range of force from low to high, and your
Mhm.
forces of your bite fall within that range. And we're at when we're at the maximum range, at the moment you're biting the hardest, we
Mhm.
look at the occlusal data, we have 1 pink contact. So that relates to the sensitivity adjustment. So that's good, because I said when you're biting hard, I want 1 to 3 pink tooth contacts. So there's our
Okay.
1.
Mhm.
And then if you open and bite again, you might see 3. And then you open again, you see a red but not a pink. So there's no exact. It's going to change because you're not going to bite exactly with the same force from bite to bite. I mean, that's
Right.
unless you're a machine or something, that's not
Right.
going to happen. But you're going to kind of, if you're biting hard, you're going to bite within that, pretty close to that range each time. The peak force will be close.
Right.
So that's where we want the sensitivity to be. So when you're biting hard, we get a pink contact. That ensures that we're using the entire range of output of the color range from the dark blue, which is the lowest forces, And I'm going to just show you over here on the bottom right of your screen. You see the color key in the bottom right?
Mm-hmm.
Darkest blue is your lowest forces, and your highest forces are the hotter colors, the reds and the pinks. And the moderate forces, of course, are the greens and the yellows. Okay. The 3D display uses both color and column height to describe force. So a pink will always be the highest column. A blue will always be the lowest column, right? So just visually, it's a little bit easier to understand relative force.
Right.
You know, it's hard to miss that pink, right? I mean, I couldn't miss it if I tried,
Right.
right? And I can see that pink relative to the green, I can get an idea. It's about twice as much force, right? And relatively, it's really easy to understand relative force. On the two-dimensional display, you get you see that single little dot. It represents the pink right here on number 11.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So it's not as easy to see relative force, right? I mean, that little pink dot, you could even miss it, right? You could even overlook it. Um, you can also see the location of the contacts. That's what the 2D view on the left side is for, because we're giving you an occlusal surface view.
Right.
So if you look as a good example, let's look at that green one on the left side on your 3D display. It's really difficult to know where that is. What tooth is that landing on? I can't really tell it because I'm at an angle. So if I slide my eyes over and I find the green contact that's in that kind of neighborhood, I can see it's either on the distal edge of 12 or the mesial edge. It looks like the mesial buckle of 13 or the distal buckle of 12, right? It's right on that interproximal line.
Right.
Okay. And the T-scan is an approximation of the location is an approximation. So when we look at a contact like that, is it on the distal of 12 or the mesial of 13? I can't say with certainty. So you would go in with articulating paper and mark
Mm-hmm.
the area, but the software is going to guide your hand to know where to go, right? If you, as an example, if you were to just mark the entire arch with a piece of like horseshoe articulating paper, you're going to get a series of marks on the teeth. They're all going to be the same color. There's no way of knowing which of those contacts are the most forceful, and there's no way of knowing which one of them happened first, second, or third in sequence. So the T-scan brings that to it, right?
Okay.
It tells us,
So you said that part right there. That's one of the key things I need to know is how can I know what happens first, second, or third
yep,
based
perfect.
on a central relation bite, just basically clenching.
Yeah. So because it's a movie, we can rewind it to the beginning. So if we go to the beginning of the movie, we can see what happens first, second, and third. Let's have you do that. On your screen at the bottom, again, you have those playback controls, right? And the first button in that group will just snap the movie back to the very beginning. And you go ahead and click on that, move to start, and you'll see the gray line, the timeline will snap back to 0.0. There you go. You can see it's at the very beginning of the movie, and
Mhm.
there's no contacts. There's
Right.
one on 6, right? So that was probably the first contact. See it up here on 6.
Yeah.
Now, but we're at very low force. We're at 0.33. We're not even at 1% of your force. So we know we're really early. You're just starting to touch, just
Mhm.
barely touching. Now, we're going to play the movie forward, but we're going to play it one frame at a time. So if you go to the button to the right of where you're at now, yep, click that. And then as you're doing that, watch the two-dimensional view or the 3D view, watch it populate. Okay. And continue to click it. And you're going to see, so early, you can see like your anterior teeth are touching first. And keep playing through. Yeah. And that's continuing the, yep. Now you just see a posterior teeth. Now 3 and 14 just came into contact.
Mhm.
So we know your anterior teeth hit first, and then your posterior teeth hit second in your case.
Hmm.
Another way to see that sequence is by looking at the center of force. So in your two-dimensional display, kind of up near tooth number 9, you see the red and white diamond?
Yeah.
That's the center of force. That's where the set right now in this frame, in this moment, the center of all of the forces are right there at that point. It's kind of like the balance
Okay.
point. So it includes
So
3.
right.
Yep.
Okay. So right here, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I see that, but then I also see these percentages here.
Yeah.
Like, so I know for a fact I have like a little mammalion on tooth number 8.
Okay.
And when I bite, I feel my anterior tooth hitting that spot first.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, which is, I mean, I've tested my bite several times, so I know this for a fact. This is what is holding up my bite, or it changes my bite.
Good.
So it's interesting to see that I'm getting equal pressure on 10 as well as 8. Like it's almost identical
At that. Yep.
in percentage at early in this juncture.
Correct.
Um, so, but it's also saying that this is where the most of the force is occurring based on what you're telling me, correct?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
so early, when you close early, most of your
Mhm.
force is on 10 and 8, right? 50% of the force on your entire arch are just on those two teeth at this moment.
Right.
Early as you're closing, and your percentage of force down the bottom is 11.75. So that gives us a little context, because when we look at occlusal data, we kind of got to know how hard are you biting, where are you within the closure. So you're in the process of closing. And we know that you're in the process of closing because on the graph, I see that black line is rising, right? So if it's
Mhm.
rising, that indicates a force is increasing. That's typically means you're closing. You're going from a low to a high force. If we're at the other end of
So
the
can
scale,
I
yep,
predict deflection in my bite based on early contact? You know what I mean? Like if I'm closing this way and I'm
yep,
hitting, like let's just say I'm hitting 9 and 10 early,
yep.
or 8 and 10 early, and then it's deflecting my bite to the right. Is this is where I'm getting that data from? Early deflections?
Yeah, yeah. So absolutely. So, but what happens early is going to affect what happens late, and if it's causing a deflection, then we could see that. Now, the software's not going to tell you it's a deflection. You have to kind of infer that from the data, right?
Right.
We give you a bunch of data. We give you data, and you can draw conclusions from the data, like in the behavior, like because this is hitting early. So the fact that it correlates to what you knew was happening, right? So you
Mhm.
said, "Oh, I knew that 8 hits first, right?"
Right.
Um, so one thing it does, it definitely confirms what you've always believed was happening. And that's a very powerful tool when you have a patient in the chair and the patient knows that that's the case, and you record this and they see it and they go, oh, I knew that was there. It's going to
Yeah.
happen a lot. And
Yeah.
that's one of those, what I call an aha moment between a dentist and a patient, because it's like, oh, because it's like, oh, he gets it, right? This guy knows what
Mhm.
he's doing. He got
Right.
exactly what I'm feeling. He's seeing, and we got this up on a display for the world to see and look at, and we can study it forever, right? We're essentially pulling articulating papers out, marks out of the mouth, and we're throwing them up on a big screen,
Right.
and we're able to then study it one frame at a time, really break the occlusion down in millimeters of a second.
Right.
So let's continue to watch it. So if you um, continue playing that forward. Yeah, and just go one frame at a time. And the slower you click, the slower we play through it. And then you can kind of watch the change of the contacts as the patient occludes. And you do have the option of going backwards one frame at a time as well. So if you miss something, you want to back up, you just go one frame at a time backwards, and you can kind of go back and forth till you kind of understand what you're seeing.
Right.
And again, you can see as you move forward that every time you click it, the gray line in the graph is moving to correlate with your movement, or you're playing the movie forward. And as it's riding up that the force line, the force is increasing. So we're at 40% of force now. So we know you're squeezing pretty well. Now the pink spike and the anterior teeth on the 9 and 8, it's kind of right in the middle. Okay, that's the most forceful contact.
Right there.
Right there. Yep. And you can see it easily on the 2D display. I mean, the
So
3D
let me ask you
display.
this question. This
Yeah.
little trail right here on the center of force, is
Yeah.
this like where I started and where it's tracking?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So you started on that, right at yeah. So the end opposite the diamond is where you started. And then as you move, the software is going to recalculate its position with every frame as you add tooth contact and you distribute forces through the arch. The software is going to track that movement. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's watch it move. Let's see what happens. Yeah, not bad. So you're going from anterior to posterior. And the side that loads fastest is the side that the center force is going to move towards.
Right.
So you see it's kind of going from anterior left to posterior right. There's a kind of a diagonal because your posterior right side, number 3 in particular, is loading faster than your left side, 14. You see you're at 20% on 3, you're at 12% on 14. So it's kind of a, so the number 3 is pulling that center of force over towards it. Okay. So it gives you kind of an idea where the early forces are, where the later forces are.
Okay, so if and just in generality, I'm saying like low numbers here, and then it's like again around this 8 area is the only high number in the anterior, and then I see, relatively 2 digits in the back.
Right.
So I guess what I'm looking at is again, could I assume that this is pulling it this way?
I don't, probably, but I don't like to make those assumptions, but I think
Mhm.
that would be a reasonable
Or influencing?
inference.
Or
Yeah, I
influence.
would assume that'd be reasonable and reasonable, but I can't say for sure or with certainty why 3 loaded after, or when 3 loaded, why it has 20% on it. But part of the reason is because 4 doesn't have anything on it, right? So all the force back there is really being borne on one tooth. It's not distributing very well. 4 isn't helping out 3, right?
Mhm.
So that's another thing that T-scan does very well. It helps you to understand, especially with implant dentistry. Let's say 5 was an implant and
Mhm.
6 or 4 were natural teeth. Now, if you had 9% on number 5 and 4% on 6 and 2% on 4, then 6 and 4 are not protecting the implant because the implant number 5 is loading faster than the other 2. We want the opposite to happen. We want the natural teeth with the periodontal ligament to load first to
Mhm.
absorb the shock. And then as that presses into the socket, then the implant in between comes together.
Gotcha.
So these are the kind of things that you can really see very clearly with a T-scan. Yeah, look at 5 is even increasing more. Again, we know it's not an implant, but if it was, this is the way
Right.
that T-scan can help you to understand and evaluate the bite. Look at
Right. So there's
15.
no
Yeah.
opposing on 4 or 13. That's why
Yeah.
the percentages are
Oh,
so.
right. Well, yeah. Well, that's maybe right. If there's nothing opposing it, and we can look at that. We'll look in a moment. We'll look at the other arch,
Mhm.
and we'll see how that arch is loading relative to the teeth. Okay. And as you continue playing forward, you notice that your force is at 82% now, right? It's continuing to creep up. But at this point, when you're like in the 80s, you know you're squeezing pretty hard at that point,
Mhm.
right? So again, you can look in the graph and the timeline, and you can get quickly at a glance, you can see where you are. You're at the kind of getting, you're at the peak of your forces right here, right? You
Right.
started closing at the A line, and then by the B line, you're completely closed right here. That's the B
Mhm.
line. And B is initial maximum intercuspation. So by the time you get to the B line, we've considered that you're completely closed, that the bite is completed.
Okay. So the A is at the beginning.
Yep.
B is at the.
Right.
So okay.
Yeah. So you want to think about the bite in three parts. There's a close, which is the A to the B in the
Mhm.
graph. There's clenching or static intercuspation, which is the B all the way out to the C. That's
Okay.
you're just clenching and you're steady. That's why the black line is steady, constant force. It's not
Mhm.
rising or falling. It's just remaining steady because you're just clenching and holding in a static force position until you open at the C line, and then the black line drops off, the force line.
Gotcha.
So it just drops down because you open. So A to B is occlusion, close. B to C, clench or static intercuspation. C to D is open or disclusion.
Okay.
Close, clench, open. Those are the 3 sections. Now, when you're just evaluating a single bite, really the only thing you have to look at is the A to B. That's the whole bite.
Right.
That's it. You clenched. After that, there's really nothing more to learn because you're just now clenching. Right. And we know there's a lot more movie, but in fact, from the B line all the way to the C, that represents all of like, maybe 2 seconds. It's not a
Mhm.
lot. It looks like a lot because it's a long graph, but it's not really a lot of time.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So you complete your bite A to B, you completed your bite.
Okay.
We go to A. So another way to navigate the movie more easily, instead of like grabbing your mouse and sliding it onto these controls, is through your
Mhm.
keyboard. So let's explore that. Now, if you want to play the movie quickly to the beginning, tap the A key, and you see you're at the A line, and
Right.
tap the B key. You're back to the B, and of course C and D will do the same. It'll just snap to those time points.
Okay.
All right. But in the, in the case of a closure, A to B is all we care about. So you go to A, and then instead of now to play the movie one frame at a time from the keyboard, the bottom right hand corner of your keyboard, there's a series of arrow keys. And if you find the right arrow key and you hold that down, it'll play the movie forward. Yep. And if you
Gotcha.
release it, it stops. Hold the left arrow key, it rewinds it. Yep. And if you tap those keys, left or right, or forward and backward keys, it advances one frame per tap. And you can just tap to the exact time point you want to get to.
Okay.
So you can evaluate any time point, back up to it, go back and forth until you understand what you're seeing, and then you can make a better decisions. At some point, hopefully sooner than later, you'll be comfortable allowing the T-scan to guide your adjustments, right? Because when you have all this information, the question is, okay, I have greens on 3, and I have oranges on the anterior teeth, and I have green on 13, and so the question is, where do I begin? So you might do is go to the A line, start tapping through it, and the early high forces, I think we already established, was like 8. That might be what I'd call a candidate for treatment, right? You might consider that might be something you might want to adjust,
So what is
right?
the overall goal when I look at a balanced occlusion?
Yeah.
Am I trying to alleviate the pinks? Is that what the goal is?
Well, the goal would be to get to get uh, an occlusion where the bite is a simultaneous bite, where all the teeth touch at the same time, and you're
Mm,
not going to get exactly simultaneous. Simultaneous would mean a true simultaneous bite if all the teeth touch at exactly the same time, right?
mm,
But that's never going to happen. It's
right.
possible, really. So, if all the teeth touch within a reasonable time frame, that would be considered a simultaneous bite. So you want the bite to be simultaneous. You want the bite to be the center of force would be ideal if the center of force started somewhere like at the top of the white ellipse, for example, somewhere in this general area. And as the patient occludes, it moves down the midline. That would suggest bilateral and simultaneous contact down the
Okay.
middle. And
You
then
mentioned something. You just said, okay, so I saw like on the movie, like my maximum bite started here and then it drilled around, came around, and then maybe halfway it got here. Now, what is this here?
yeah, so it's a standard deviation. All right. And so the white ellipse is a certain number of standard deviations, and the gray is a number of standard deviations. What it means that the crosshair in the middle, the target, would suggest that if the patient lands on that at maximum intercuspation, and if I just point my mouse on the graph and click, just to get to the middle of the bite somewhere, you see wherever I click my mouse, the timeline will snap to that point. So I know where you're well into the bite right here. I know you're clenching and holding, and the center force lands here, right? It would be ideal for the center force to land on the middle of that ellipse, right in the middle of the target. That would suggest that the forces are being concentrated through the center of the palate.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now that assumes a full, natural, healthy dentition as opposed to a couple of implants on one side. Because if there's a couple of implants, you might want to create an occlusion that where the forces are a little bit slightly off to the opposite side,
Mm,
right? So because you can now see it, you can control its behavior. So you can customize a better occlusion because you can see it. You
right.
have to be able to see it before you can do anything about it, right?
Right.
Now that you can understand, well, I know I'm early in that anterior left, and then I know the 3 loads is quicker than 14. So now I have some kind of idea where the forces start, where they're going to. And when you have an understanding of where you want them to go, you can start to adjust and influence that center of force. So you can, yeah, so you could now like make an adjustment, retest, do another scan, and then you could open up side by side and you can show the difference between your center of force. We started out here on the left, the anterior. After an adjustment or equilibration, now I get the center of force more into the middle and more down the midline.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So, okay, this just like just the example you gave me. So I'm loading early on 3. So I will go in the mouth and bevel the cuss tip on here and then take a new scan to see if I'm still loading at the same point in reference at that same juncture. to see if it changed colors.
Yeah, so you could, yeah, so again, the T-scan is going to let you see your adjustments and your changes. So you might do a moderate adjustment. You might be more conservative at first and look at cause and effect, right? So go in and dust the tooth contact, mark it with articulating paper.
Yeah.
You still need that. They're complementary products. This does not
Mhm.
replace articulating paper. It adds more information that
Right.
articulating paper just can't provide. And so using the two tools, the software would say, well, that anterior, that number 8, right? Maybe that's early where you needed first attention. Go in, mark. So you're still adjusting on marks, and then you make an adjustment, you rescan, you look at that, and you look at the change that it made, and then you kind of work your way around.
Right.
But that's another, yeah. So once you understand the tool and how the tool functions, then getting into like, okay, now I understand how you use this thing. How do I now apply it so that I can make good adjustments? And so, we have
Right.
other resources for that. So I'm not a dentist. I don't teach how to adjust. I've never, I've never put a drill to somebody's teeth before, thank God.
But you've been
But
around, so you
I've been
know.
around.
Don't act like you don't know.
Yeah. No, I know enough to, I can kind of, yeah, but again, I'm not a dentist, so I really can't even,
Right.
you know, I can suggest things, um, but my point was we do have other resources. So beyond once you learn T-scan, and again, we have 2 lessons, right? This is today, just get you up and running, the basics of setting it up, setting sensitivity, how to take a good scan, how to save and review the scan. I'll let
Right.
you use it for a couple of weeks on your own. We'll follow up with a second training. We'll do a deeper dive into what we're going to do next time is we're going to record excursions.
Okay.
And we'll look at anterior guidance, balancing side interferences, working side contact, understand how the chewing motions affect the bite and so forth.
Okay.
So, but today, again, I just want you to get familiar with the kind of the parts and the functionality.
Okay.
So now we have a recording. I want to save it. So at the top of your screen, it says scan type. The first thing we do is put a label on the scan. What type of scan did I just record? So if you click the down arrow next to scan type.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. And then you have all these pick list, and we would probably call it centric occlusion, different, there's different vocabularies, right?
Mhm.
Different philosophies, different vocabularies. So that would probably be just a straight unguided closure, centric occlusion. So we label the scan. To the left, there's an active scan list. So you have that white thumbnail that represents this scan. It
Mhm.
identifies the patient to Mr. Test. The
Mhm.
scan type was centric occlusion, and then it automatically dates it and timestamps it for you.
Okay. There you
Now
go.
in that thumbnail, there's a square, there's a little gray arch.
Mhm.
Now the gray arch, there's no number in there. So if you will know it's saved when you see a number appear. So if you click the save button at the top of the screen there, yeah, you'll see a number will appear, number 1, and now you know it's saved. So if you see a number, you glance over, there's a number in it, it's a saved scan.
Okay.
Okay. So you did a scan, you scanned a single bite, you say, okay, I'm ready to do another scan. Just take your handpiece and click your record button. There you go.
Gotcha.
Now you're ready to do a new scan. It opens it up automatically. So all this recording functionality is you can do chair side, as we mentioned earlier. The next time you click it, it puts it into the record mode.
Okay.
And I just want you to understand something. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you see it says press record button to scan.
Mhm.
Click that record button. Or the one on the handpiece, same thing, either one. Now, yeah, so try it on your handpiece. Record. Yep, it says armed for bite. Now it's in the record mode, but it's not scanning anything until the patient bites on it. The trigger is the patient biting. And when the system detects the first contact, it starts recording. So keeping your eye where it says armed for bite, squeeze the sensor with your fingers. Yep. And then squeeze, release a few times, and then hit the button again on your handpiece to stop the recording. Okay. And in a moment, it'll process it. And then you go, we have a second. That's you squeezing on the sensor.
Right.
You squeeze 3 times. The first time you squeeze and held for a long time, relatively speaking, right? At
Yeah.
0, and you held, you relaxed a little bit in the middle, then you squeeze hard, and then you let go at about 3.5 seconds into the movie. Then there was a gap of time. You squeezed again, and you squeeze slowly, and you kind of built up the force, and you let go, and then a third squeeze. Okay, so that's why the graph is helpful. I can look at it at a glance, and I can say, oh, I know you squeezed 3 times. I know when you squeeze the hardest. I know when you squeeze the longest. I know what part of the sensor you squeezed on, because the green line is the left side of the sensor. And that's why here, I know when you're squeezing in this bite, I know you're squeezing on the left side because the green line is at the top at 88%.
Yeah.
And down here, that's 12% right here.
Right.
Over here, you squeeze only on the green side. That's why the green line is way at the top at 100%. You're on the left side only. And in this one, you squeeze kind of in the middle. You know, most of the force is on the green side, but a little bit on the red side. So you can see your 68-31 over here, right here.
Oh, I see what they did on the graph at the bottom. So you have A1 through B1, then A2, B2, and A.
Right,
I see.
correct. Yeah, so if you have multiple bytes, you're going to get, for each byte, you get a series of the A, B, C, D lines, every byte. A1 is the beginning of the first byte, A2 is the beginning of the second byte. So if you tap the A key on your keyboard, try that. You see where the timeline is right now? Now it's at the beginning. Yeah, now it snaps. If you just hit your A key again, it's now at A2. If you hit your A key again, it snaps to A3. And same thing with the B line. It'll go B1, B2, B3. It'll always go from left to right.
Gotcha.
So it's a quick way to kind of navigate a movie. You can do everything from your keyboard, right? So if you want to get to the beginning of the second byte, you tap the A key until it brings you over to the A2.
Mhm.
And then once you're there, you can use the arrow, the left right keys to move through the movie back and forth.
Right.
Okay. All right. So we don't want this movie. We have no reason to save it. So in the thumbnail, you can click the X button, the X out button there.
So
Close.
I didn't change the configuration. So once I start doing that, it labeled itself as a movie.
It did. Good of you to notice. So it's the only type of byte of recording that the software automatically labels. It recognizes a multi-byte. And we're going to do a multi-byte right now. So close that one. Say, no, I don't want to save it. There's no reason to save it. Okay, say I want to do a new recording, click the record button on your handpiece. This confuses people because the first time you click record, it's not in the record mode, it just opens up a new recording window.
Right.
The next time you click it, it puts it in the record mode and it just waits for the patient to bite before it's actually going to start to record.
Right.
All right, so so now let's go ahead. I'm going to have you do a multi-byte scan. And this
Okay.
means that I'm going to have you bite 4 times.
Four
Each
times.
time you're going to bite with the same force. You're going to bite and open. You're going to pause for about a half a second. Bite hard, open. Bite hard, open. Bite hard, open. Bite hard, open. You hear the cadence in my voice?
Yeah.
You want to do that with the patient. You want to coach the patient and tell the patient, I'll let you know when to bite. I'll let you know when to open. And I want you to bite hard each time.
Okay.
And then say, okay, put it in the mouth, get it in position. And then when you're ready, click record, go ahead, bite hard, open, bite hard, open. They'll stay paused until you tell them to open.
Right.
So let's give it a try. Okay, and I'll guide you just so you can hear what the coaching would be. Okay, it's in position, you're not biting. Okay, bite. Oh, okay. See the lines in the anterior teeth? That means there's something wrong. That shouldn't be like that. Let's take it out of your mouth. Yeah, that's better. Yeah. See, I see yeah, if you see lines like that, there's something, it might be pulling it out. Sometimes if there's enough, if you have an overbite or an overjet, I don't know if you do, but no, okay, yeah. So that can do that. It can kind of torque the sensor out of the handpiece and cause that line. Let's close this recording.
Yeah, that's what I was
Let's
trying
say no, I don't want to save it. Okay. Open up a new movie window on your handpiece. Good. This time, before you bite, before you hit record, just bite one time and just don't hit record yet. Because visually, you want to just make sure you're hitting the sensor. It's in the center. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, now open, hit record, and follow my lead. Bite hard and hold. Open, bite, open, bite, open, bite, open. Stop the scan and remove it from your mouth. Okay, so if we had a single bite like this graph right now, it rises, and now if we bite 4 times, we get four traces, right?
Right.
And I can see easily. So at a glance, I can look at the screen. I say, oh, 4 bites. The graph is super helpful because it gives me a lot of information and context into the movie. It's my timeline, right? I bite together and hold, I open. I bite together and hold and open 4 times. Each time you bite, you can see the green and the red line in the graph is the balance of your left to right side. So if I
Mhm.
go over here and just click, I'm just going to click my mouse kind of like well after you've already clenched. And I see you're at 57, say, let's call it 58-42 for round numbers, in favor of your left side, right? Your left side is more forceful than your right, roughly 58-42. Now in the next bite, it's similar because I can see the green and the red trace is similar. So if I click here, I'm at 55-45. So close, right? Only a
Yeah.
couple percentage points off. Now the next one looks, again, we're close. There you go, 56-43. And one more time, we have the 58-42, right? So 4 times you bite, every time you're about the same left to right ratio,
Mhm.
right? Around the 55-57 on the left side. Over and over, 4 times you repeated that. Okay. So why we do the multi-bite scan is because we're looking for reproducibility.
Right.
Because I need, if I record 1 bite right here, this is your, I hate when it does that. Let me just turn that off for a sec. Okay. So let's look at your first bite. It's creating, we'll look at that in a moment. This is your first bite. It's a single bite. And now,
Right.
how do I know that this is representative of your occlusion?
Right.
Because I don't have anything to compare it. I have no reference.
Right.
Right? I don't know. Maybe I can trust it, or I can say, well, let's do a multi-bite scan and look at 4 bites. And if the 4 bites are similar from bite to bite to bite, I feel a lot more confident with the data
Right.
because now I have it's reproducing itself. So I go to the first bite in this general area and I look at the movement of the center of force. And that's similar to that first bite we took, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, started up near this area here and it moved kind of toward the diagonal was toward that posterior. It started anterior left and it moved posterior right. And at the end, it kind of started to come back to the left side. And the next bite, but where it comes to rest, it stops right here. Remember that spot right there.
Mhm.
And then if we go to B, yep. And I left my mouse there on purpose to show you that look at the center of force. It came to rest in this exact same spot.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's under my mouse pointer. You can't even see it. Now I'll tap my B key again. We'll go to the third bite. Look where the center of force came to rest, right where my mouse is. And
Yeah.
then one more time, tap the B key. I'm at B4 and look where the center of force came to rest. And the line is very similar, right? It's always in this direction. It may not be exactly the same, but the overall trend is the same, right? You start
Mhm.
in this area and it moves in that direction and it stops, comes to rest right here. So we call that the resting place or static intercuspation. I'm just going to go to the beginning of the fourth bite. And if we play the movie
So
forward,
does that
yeah,
say that the center of force is actually on over here?
yeah, it's on the anterior right, the anterior left area when you first close. And if you look, just take a step back, look at the overall contact pattern. Look at everything's on the left right now, right?
Right.
From basically from 8 or 9 all the down to like 12 and even 14, where you have nothing's touching on the right.
Right.
That's why the center force is over there because the forces are on the left side. And that's
Okay.
why we're at 73% of force on your left and 26 on the right at this moment. So now if the right side starts to come in to counterbalance what was early on the left, now you're starting to load the right. Later, it's pulling the center force back to the midline, but it never gets to the midline. It's as far as it gets right here. It doesn't get all the way to the middle because you never get complete balance from the left to the right side.
Right.
Right. So the software, again, it's going to characterize the bite in time and in force. Okay. So after I do a multi-bite, I say, okay, this looks pretty repeatable. The graph, right? The green and red is like the same every time you bite 4 times. We got the same graph. Every time you bite, the center force comes to rest in the same place. And that's repeatable 4 times in a row. So I'm starting to feel more and more confident. And then finally, the third point is the overall contact pattern of the teeth. So if you look at the 3D display, and here I am, I'm going to click to the next bite. Okay, so I'm going to go back and forth. Now you can see it looks a little different, but it's the same contact pattern back here, right here. It's just the magnitudes might be a little different. So now it's 2 pinks instead of over here it was a pink and an orange, but it's still same thing, right? If this was a little bit more forceful, that would be 2 pinks. So that's similar. And then you go to the next one and the next one, and I'm just seeing, is it similar? They're not going to be exact, but look at the third and fourth bite are almost identical, and the third bite, the first bite, yeah, they're all close. You can see you have low forces through this area here. You always have the high force on that posterior on number 3 and 14. All right. So you want to kind of go through that and evaluate the scan, the quality of the scan by looking for repeatable, places that you can compare. And it's the graph, the center of force, and the overall bite pattern. And once you've determined it's a good scan or it's not, if things are just completely different every time they bite, I would rescan them. And then once you get to that point and you've determined, yeah, it's pretty repeatable, I'm good with the scan. As a tiebreaker, because you don't want to analyze 4 bites, we would suggest you go to the bite with the most force in it. And clearly that's number 4.
Right.
And then you go to A4, go to the beginning and tap through it using your right arrow key and watch slow. And you look at the early high forces, and those are places where you might consider starting your adjustments.
Okay.
And I see the test, that second bite is not saved, right? There's no number here. It's already labeled it as a multi-bite for you. So all you got to do is click your save button. Good. Now it's scan number 2 is saved.
All right.
All right. Yeah. And just the final feature I want to show you is that, and I'll just jump to the middle like the second bite, just so we can see we have we can see the occlusal data. Right here, if you want to see the other arches, we're looking at the upper, lower arch view. Okay, so you can kind of get an idea where the occlusion is. And then you can look at both arches simultaneously if you want.
Distal buckle. I mean, yeah, distal buckle cups.
What's that?
Now I'm looking at where
the
pressure, where majority of the pressure is on the distal buckle cups.
Yeah. 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 You had mentioned earlier about the arch model, about aligning the arch model.
Yeah.
Notice on this bite, if you look at the left posterior side, there's a contact that's well distal to number 14. But you said you don't have 15.
Right.
I don't have that tooth. But but we see contact in the area where 15 would be if you had it. So this has to be wrong, because if there's no tooth there can't be occlusion there. There can't be contact. So we know that the most distal tooth in your mouth and your upper arch is 14. And so if we know that, the distal terminal contact is on 14. This has to be 14.
Right.
Can't be 15. You don't have it. So this should be up here.
Right.
So how do we rectify that? Down here on the right, there's a ruler. It looks like a ruler, and we can edit the arch model. We never measured your central. We use the default of 8.5. Right. So if I make the central incisor wider by clicking the up arrow here, come on. You see it's elongating the 2D arch. Look at number 14 on the left. And what I'm doing is I keep my eye on that arch. and I'm clicking until I push that black edge of that interproximal line or the embrasure line just distal to the edge. Now that lines up well, right? And now that this tooth number 14 lines up better with the arch model, the other teeth will tend to be better aligned.
Right.
So let's see now that, so the other thing is, I'm going to go back to the lower arch. Let's see. Yeah, see that one, that one worked well. That kind of fell right into place. The only concern I have, and I don't know how to rectify this, is why we have all that contact here, if that's a missing open. So this tooth is missing an open.
Yeah.
So you have 21. You know what I think? When you say it's open, is it like a full open, or is it partially closed up? Is it a, you have
I
the
mean,
entire tooth
it's
space there?
spacing that does that.
Okay, it does that. So the occlusal surface of the teeth are kind of
Like
close
this.
together,
No, I mean they're literally like a gap like this,
like
but
a full tooth gap.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'm just wondering how. See, you can see the contact on that where 20 would be.
Right.
So why? So something's not making sense, because if you don't have 20, then there shouldn't be contact. That should be empty. That, you know, you have
Mhm.
even if you have an opposing tooth, you have to have two teeth hitting each other.
Right.
Let me look at both arches here. Let's see what's going on. So this is so here it makes sense. Here it doesn't make sense.
Well, you also got to think I still have an upper tooth at
You do.
the yeah, so that's still contacting
Yeah, but you
something.
can't.
Like it's
Yeah, but if you press on one side of the sensor, it shouldn't pick up data. It has to be pinched. It has to be pinched between two surfaces.
oh, okay.
So although you're pressing on one side, that
Okay.
shouldn't even, if you take the sensor and
It
turn on
shouldn't
the
matter.
real-time window and do that, you shouldn't even see data. Maybe a little bit of noise, but not like that much data. That's clearly a forceful contact. So
Right.
this just means that, and you have 18, right? And you don't have,
Mhm.
yeah, so you have 18, but so something here let's look at that.
Like, can you adjust individual teeth
You can, yeah. So
on
you
the
can,
skin?
yeah. So this is a global, right? What we do with the, by changing the central incisor width is a global change. It changes everything
Right.
proportionally based on the central
Right.
incisor width. If you just grab the interproximal line right here, like between 30, and you click and I'm dragging that. See, I just moved it.
Gotcha.
So you can go and move any of these lines individually. So this, you know what I think? I think it's maybe more like this. I wonder let me see how far. Hmm. Yeah, that would be too much. No, that could be on there. Yeah. In the end, it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's an approximation, right? Because the software is using algorithms. We didn't take an actual impression of your teeth,
Right.
right? This is just, we told the software based on the central incisor width of this is kind of what your teeth should look like. But teeth move and shift and migrate. So we do the best we can to represent the arch model.
Okay.
All right. And there is a feature. Do you digitize? Do you have a digital impression?
We have intraoral camera, however, it's on the blink right now.
Oh, but what about a digital? Does it create digital impressions?
I mean, we have the Serac machine,
Okay.
so we have the OmniCam.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. All right. So you can do a digital impression. So you can. This software will allow you to import digital impressions, as long as it
Right.
has a file extension .stl, which is typically what they
Right.
make. Then you can import an STL file into the system, and you can superimpose the tooth contact data over a arch. Okay, and that's something we can discuss our next training, because that in itself is
Do you
kind of a
guys have a
lesson.
video that you can send me that shows that? Because I mean, I've kind of looked and there is no
Yeah, well,
video of showing
yeah, well,
those two things like that.
yeah, we have it
They'll tell
here.
you how to do it, but it is, I've never seen like a recording of it actually happening.
Of the digital impression.
Digital impression with the
So
T-scan,
yeah, so
like showing it simultaneously how it works. Like I
yeah,
haven't seen a video of that. If you guys have one,
yeah. Let's see what. Oh, come on. Oh, I know you have it. Come on. Here it is. What I'm surprised. So it's called DIO. That's the feature right here. DIO,
okay.
digital impression overlay. And you can see, I'll just give you a quick, this is what it would look like. This is the actual digital impression imported into the T-scan.
Okay.
So in place of this white, this arch model, which we've been using, you can replace it with the digital impression. Now,
Oh, that's nice.
you still have, yeah, it is nice. You still have to know how to use a T-scan without that because you're not going to digitize everybody. And you just need to know, in order to use this, you have to know how this functions. So you have to learn that anyway
Right.
to have a
But
basis
see, with
for
that, you
this.
can see the actual where everything should line up. So that would tell you exactly.
Yeah, right. And you can move the interproximal lines. You can see the teeth, and you can draw. You can
Yeah,
draw. You
that's.
can slide these lines between the actual teeth. So
Mhm.
that helps to align it, and you can see what the teeth. Right. When you see the teeth, it's a different ball game. So,
All right.
um,
So this is the point I wanted to see right here. So you see how the curve hugs the teeth. So let's say like this tooth was sitting out here. Would the T scan recognize that this tooth is going out this way, or what? Or do I have the ability to bow it out to accommodate that?
you talking about the green outline?
No, no,
Yeah.
no, no. So okay. Let me get
When
okay.
I just want
You see what I'm
your
saying? So
mouse.
if
When you
if
move your
everything was
mouse,
in line,
when you move your mouse, I don't see it on the screen, unfortunately. Just enough. That's
oh, you
just
don't see it?
and I know you see mine, but yeah, it's just a limitation of Zoom. It doesn't show me yours. So
Can you see mine now?
no, I just try moving
Okay.
it again or clicking on the window, see if it's. You're looking at the digital impression overlay screen.
Yeah,
You're looking at the middle
yeah,
image.
yeah.
So you got tooth one
So what
through.
I'm saying is, okay, on the buccal side of where the green line is, like it's curving out the right. So
Yeah,
let's just say 14 was out of sticking out buccally,
yeah, like
where
that.
it's not in the arch. Will the scan recognize that and bow it out,
It
or
won't
do I
be.
have the opportunity to bow it out with the
Yeah, so you don't have the, however it draws it is how it draws it. You can't really then move the
gotcha?
green line, but it's not important. The green arch outline is just kind of a reference. And then in the middle of the green outline, you have another green line, which is a central fossa line. So they're just
Yeah,
visual aids, right?
right.
But
Okay.
yeah, I can see what you're talking about. That number 14, the buckle of that is kind of outside the arch, and here it's right lined up perfectly on the right.
Right,
But
because a lot of cases, those second molars are sitting way buccally and is not in the alignment,
right,
right? But you want, in a lot of times, especially with TMD cases, those are the influences. Those, like the patient that I have, I know for a fact her second molar is what's causing the problem. She's only having 3 points of contact in the whole mouth.
yeah.
Um, I know that for a fact before I even put on a T scan, but it confirmed what I was looking at. But my question, my initial thought was, well, how about if it's too far buccally out, would it capture that, or will it give me a false positive? You see what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
yes, yeah. So no, it won't capture that. It doesn't give you any reference to if that is in its proper position or it's too far outside of that line or not. It's just
Okay.
again, it's just a tool for the software to kind of get a clue of the overall arch shape and size, width and depth. Um, but it's not, you can't manipulate that tool, and it doesn't really, it's not like a diagnostic tool, that arch outline. It's just
Gotcha.
just
Okay.
a quick reference. But I just wanted you to
Okay.
see what the arch outline looks like. And here it is. If you want to, in our help file, you can search for it and you can see, this shows you how it works and how you do it. But we can capture it on a different, on another training, we can cover that. And if you want to do digital impression overlay, I need two things. I need the digital impression and the T-scan movie recordings of the same patient.
Okay.
So if you have those, we can import them as long as you know where those are. If you have the digital impressions from your CERAC and you know where they are, because we have to go to get them and import them into the software. So
Okay.
put them somewhere in your hard drive or whatever that we can go get them, and then we can we can do one together. It probably spend like 15 minutes on that.
Okay. All
But
right.
there's other things beyond that that we need to cover. So if you feel this is a good place for us to stop, just to get you started. I don't expect you to be an expert yet, but we'll get you there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a
All
good
right.
place to start.
Good.
Yeah.
And do you want to pick a date and time for our next training, or do you need to get back to me on that?
Let's see. Let's see. Maybe July 30th.
Let's have a look. July 30th. Just grab my calendar.
July is gone already.
Yeah. Hopefully some of that's vacation, no?
Yeah, we're moving, so like
Oh.
right now I'm in my daughter's room because the other half of it's all messed up.
Oh.
Yeah,
How
so
how old's your daughter?
13.
My daughter's 13.
Yeah, it's a fun time, right?
Yeah, yeah. You have more than one?
Yeah, and I have a 7-year-old son.
Oh, good for you. I
Yeah,
have a 13-year-old daughter. Uh, it's a lot of fun.
it's a lot
Most of the time.
of fun.
Okay, so you said the 30th, which is a Friday. That looks good for me. Yeah, let's do it. What time? It's
Same
wide
time.
open. You pick the time.
Let's do same time,
10,
9:30.
10:30?
Yeah,
No, is that what time?
one.
No, we did 9:30. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. It's been, yeah, okay, 9:30. 9:30 to 10:30. And as you can see, they often go overtime, so you might want to leave extra room on the other side.
okay. Yeah, that's what I figured that. That's why I wanted to go to today because I knew I didn't have anything
Good, yeah, perfect.
today.
Yeah, and I'll block till 11. So we'll start at 9:30 on July 30th, and I'll send you a confirmation email on that.
Perfect.
All right,
All right.
awesome, good start.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, my friend, you have a great weekend.
You too.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye.
Bye.